Hi, I'm Skylar. If you'd like to create an antique effect in Aperture, there are a number of different ways to go about it, but let's dive right in and see what we can do. I've got a couple antique-looking images here in my library, and this is actually a photograph made by my great-uncle Charlie. So if we take a look at both these images and compare them to this raw digital capture, we notice a few things, like obviously color. We also notice contrast is a lot different. Both of these images actually show very different contrast profiles, and I chose them specifically so that we could get an idea of the range of looks an antique photograph might have. I think what I'll do is attempt to simulate this one most closely because I think that fits the idea of an antique. So what are some things about this image that catch our eye? Well, the overall contrast ratio is really important to see. There are no very deep blacks in this image, and the whites are also fairly restrained. Also, what you can see is the grain structure, and we can also see artifacts from the printing process here. This is a fingerprint. So in Photoshop, it would be relatively easy to go grab a texture and overlay that to add some grain or noise, things of that nature in order to make the photo look distressed. But in Aperture, we don't have any grain tools. So how can we get around that? I think this is our first step to creating an antique-looking image, is to be able to distress it in some way. So the first thing we'll do is actually create a new Aperture library. So go to Switch to Library and click Other, New, Create New, give it a name, and click Create. I've already made one, so I'm going to switch to that now. Okay, here we are in an empty library, and I'm going to get one of my raw files and just drag it in so that we can start to work with it. Okay, so here we've got a file. You're going to do two different things. Get your dodge tool, rotate this image so it's horizontal. Okay, so using the dodge tool, just write a big D on the image. You're going to be hunting through the Finder a little bit later, so this is to tell yourself that this is the image with the dodge applied to it. And bump that way up so that you can find it easily. Okay, now add a burn filter and do the same thing. Just write a B. And bump that up. Okay, great, that's done. So now close Aperture. In Photoshop, you're actually going to open Aperture's masks. So here's that library that I created. It's Test. I'm going to right-click on it and click Show Package Contents. This allows me to see what's actually inside. I'm going to go to Masks, and I'll see some folders here. These folders are where Aperture stores the masks for dodging and burning and other brush work. So we've got our burn mask, and down here we've got our dodge mask. So I'm going to open both of these in Photoshop. And do the dodge first. Okay, so here's my file. Now I'm going to select all and delete and clear its contents. I'm going to fill it with 50% gray. Now I'm going to add noise by going to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. I'm going to make it Gaussian, and I'm going to bring the amount down pretty low, right around there I think, and click OK. Now I'm just going to save that image exactly where it was. Okay? And now I'm going to do the same thing with the other mask. So I did dodge, and now I'm going to do burn. Remember, select all, clear it, fill it with 50% gray, and add noise. You can do it exactly the same way, and now save it. I'm going to go back to Aperture now, using my same test library, the one that I made the dodge and burn images with. Okay, here I am. And we'll see that it's loading. It's obviously thinking about something. And if we scroll down, we see that we've got dodge and burn applied here. What it's loading is those TIFF files. So we created those very noisy looking images in Photoshop and then saved them. So now we have grain applied to the image, just like that. And I can adjust the amount of grain by changing these sliders. That, I think, is really handy. So making sure that you've only got those two adjustments applied to the image. Go up to Effects and click Save as Effect. I've already got one called Grain, so I'll do Grain 2. I click OK. When you save it as an effect, it then becomes system-wide. So in any of your Aperture libraries, you can access this. So I'm going to close this library and open my working one. Okay, so now we see our antique photos again. And here I've got this one. Using the curves tools and color monochrome, other things like that, you can quickly approximate the look of the antique. So I'll add an adjustment, click color monochrome, and then choose a color that looks pretty close to what I've got on the right here. Pretty close there. Now I'm going to add a curves layer and put a couple control points down. I'm going to grab the shadows and bring them up. Immediately we see that the image takes on an antique feel. And we can start to manipulate the curves a little bit more to really give it some of that old-timey look. I'm also going to add a vignette. And finally, click Effects and apply your grain. I recommend that you add the grain last because it's a big TIFF file, so it's definitely going to take a lot of your processing power and memory in order to do that. Once you add it, though, you'll see it render, and you can adjust the amount of grain and how it looks, remember, by changing those sliders. So we'll give it a bunch of grain and let it render. And now we're looking at what looks pretty close to an antique image. That's it. Believe it or not. I'm Skylar. Thanks for watching.